Welcome back to another edition of the Gabagools Podcast episode. I think we're on 33 now, Larry Bird episode. With me today to break down the Jets, Bears, and a little bit of fantasy talk here, Richie Forbags. How we feeling?
Feeling good. We're in week 5 of the fantasy. So at this point, we're starting to see, contenders. We're starting to see the drop-offs. This is about the time of the season in which you start making trade moves. You never really make those too early in the season. But now is kind of for those middle weeks where it's like, all right, we need to start beefing up or we got to start, selling ship and moving on for next year. So I think it's a pretty exciting time. We've already had a bunch of the trades are starting to ramp up in our leagues. And I only expect that to continue further as we start getting really into the meat of the season here.
100%. Yeah. That's one thing, too, is like if you have a plan, you should always have a plan in place going into the season. You shouldn't just go in automatically thinking, hey, I'm just going to see what happens. You should go in.
Ever.
Yeah, like if you start off 2-0, okay, we start having those initial conversations of looking at everybody's team, looking at the teams that are 0-2, so on and so forth. Or if you're 0-2 and you have a loaded roster that's either been injury plagued or just bad luck, you might be playing in a league like what we play in where the last seed for the playoff is based off of points scored, which is I love that
It's
format.
huge. Isn't that how I got in last year, I believe? Yeah, so
Yeah,
that was massive. I scored a ton of points, but I kept fucking losing somehow. And
yeah.
then it had got me so thankfully that we have that system and setup because that did get me into the playoffs.
Yeah, enough times where I've missed the playoffs and could have gone to the championship too, in recent memory too. That's where that's pissed me off, and I wanted to make that change just because yeah, being selfish. But there's other teams that have been absolute dogs out there that miss the playoffs all because of they
Yep.
can't get in. But yeah, like what I was saying too, if you're 0-2, if it's not by design, you start looking at selling off your running backs, selling off some wide receivers to see if you can either a tier down. If say you have AJ Brown type player, you might try to trade down to a T Higgins and a first type of deal, and
Yep.
always try to consolidate and see like what you can do from there. And you can always move these players later too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you have to start doing like that's especially we're obviously talking dynasty fantasy leagues. We're not talking just your everyday league. You have to think like that. You just absolutely have to think like that. Like a great example was last year when I was losing the games. I was like, all right, well, we got to start. I started to sell. I sold Saquon. I sold a number of players and then got a bunch of picks for this upcoming draft. And then I essentially reloaded with Neighbors, Roma Dunze, Brock Bowers. And so if you know your season's not going well and you have talent to trade, it's probably behoove you to trade it. But then again, as we always say, just because you have the pick doesn't mean you're going to hit on the player, right? Like
Yep.
a great example was I traded Derrick Henry maybe last year or the year before, and for 110, so the back end of a first round pick, and my dumbass picked Michael Mayer. So like over Kincaid, like so it doesn't. There's no guarantees that your picks are going to hit. You need to know who the players are. Advantage to us because we are in a college dynasty. We already know who's going to hit in the league,
Right.
which is really nice. And I'm glad you started that college league because it helps for the NFL and prepping for being drafting these players.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes hand in hand with you should be looking at the 2025 class already. Like if
You
you're
should.
not, regardless, even if you're a contender, you should still be looking because you could find these, gems in the second and third rounds if you haven't already sold your picks. Like, obviously, a way that I don't play it, but a way that I usually recommend people to play with their first round picks is you hold that as long as possible. And when you're about to be a contender, you put all your chips in. You don't play around and play this half in, half out where I'm going to play, but I'm going to have my first going into next year. Now in a 10-man league, you can kind of get away with that just because weird things happen and 6 out of 10 teams usually get in. But when you're looking at it, selling your first, people overvalue first round picks, especially during
Oh
rookie
yeah.
time. And you could easily, like, I've done it in a couple of leagues where I've literally sold off. I've had like 1-7, and I literally traded back for like 1-9 and a 25 first. So I'm already set up for the future.
And that's huge because like that's theoretically people shouldn't do that. but desperation and people want to move up a couple slots. And it's actually like the actual NFL draft, like the Bears moved up from, I hate to even bring up 2017. Bears had the third pick in the draft. They moved up to 2 with the 49ers, and the 49ers went to 3, took Trey Lance. But we move up to 2, but we gave up, I believe, another maybe 2 first round picks, just to move up one slot. So when that desperation calls, you have to capitalize on it. And another good point you made is, yeah, like if you're a contender, you need to hold on to that first, because as you get deeper in the season, you don't need that first. If you think you're going to go to the playoffs and you're going to win a chip, you need to trade that first for some depth. A starting running back, a starting wide receiver that's been playing good all year. Hell, if you got to trade 1 and 2 to make it happen, like we're here to win, right? We're here to win chips. We're not here just to build nice rosters. You got to win. So,
and honestly, people look 5 years down the road, which is a big mistake in fantasy because 1, the player might not even be around in 5 years. 2, the league might not be around in 5 years. We're fortunate that I've kind of created leagues that have been around for like a number of years, and like the league that we're in, like the home league as I call it, is that's been around for 10 years. So like we've been really digging deep into like the dynasty landscape and being able to get like a lot of good content and just like experience from it. But like some of these leagues, people fold them and people quit, and it takes a lot to rebuild people.
Sure.
So that's why it's like you almost want to play in like 3-year increments and say, hey, if I'm not gonna win this year, I always look at the top 3 teams and I assess from there. Am I one of those top 3 teams? If I'm not, I'm gonna try to lose for Caleb. I'm tanking for Genty, whatever it might be.
Yep.
I'm looking at future assets because I'm not like, $100 might be a lot to a lot of people, but when you're playing in multiple leagues, it's like, okay, it's spread out. One league I might be contending, the other one I might be rebuilding. And then if the stars align and I have both and I'm making all my money back times, say less.
So I think a big portion of that too is like you say about you can't like think about a 5-year outlook. You said 3, I say even 2, because there's a factor that we have to account for is like some of these players don't replicate their success year to year. They really don't, and you have to keep that in mind. So like you have to be very fluid with what's happening and very in tune with who you're going to trade and who you're going to keep and what the scheme of the team looks like. Did the coach get fired, right? So the Jets is a great example. Are you going to buy more stock into the Aaron Rodgers offense now that Salah's gone and Hackett's been demoted? Like those are very, very important things that you have to like be very mindful about when you're also selecting players. It's not just, this player is going to do this on this given week or this year or next year or the year after. There's so many variables that need to be accounted for. And that's why I never go past 2 years. Yeah. And it's just too much. Quarterbacks get hurt. Tua's about to go to the retirement home. How many people bought stock in Tua because he's been Tyreek and Jalen and then Achane with, the team was looking great. Well, now Tua's gone. All the people that bought stock in Hill and Waddle are sitting there with the fucking tail between their legs. Achane hasn't had that great of a year. He's a great back. But now, however, without those 2 dynamic wide receivers getting fed the ball, the threat of the deep ball, defense are just going to hammer down on stopping Achane. And now Achane's value, it might go down because of that. So there's so many things you have to think about when it comes to this dynasty formats, and that's why we obviously love them. We don't do those year-to-year bullshit anymore.
Waste of time and money, because honestly, by week 3, if you see half the leagues 0-3, they're tuning out, and that's why I exclusively I do dabble in some keeper leagues too, just because like old friends are in them, and it's like okay, we just keep it going. But no, I have a majority of my leagues are dynasty format, just because it's year to year. You keep what you have, you build upon it, and I love like ripping it down to the studs and building it back up too, because I've done that a number of times where I've taken like a year off and then I'm contending the next year, so you have to, like you said, 2-year increments depending on the league size. You just look at the windows too, but yeah, this is a good time to buy. I mean, you look at these, if you have aging running backs, sell those to the contenders, get what you can for them. If you could tear down, like I said, or even just get first, first or gold when it comes to rookie time. And even if it's if you're at the back end of the draft and you don't like what's on the board, just trade that pick away and you could get a better running back or so. But I
Yep.
mean, I think I've said it before on some not rebuilding podcasts, but like just in general, if you, if you don't have the QBs to win, you're not going to win in super flex. At least you kind of it's imperative to have two top 10 QBs, and the landscape now is changing where you can kind of get away with the top 15. But I mean, you need like if you have just stud running backs but no QBs and mediocre wide receivers, gotta start assessing here whether you trade those running backs. You kind of make some moves.
Yeah, totally.
And then transitioning into, I see that you mentioned the Jets in the last one with the, Brees Hall trade. Is he going to get more? Is Rodgers going to look better? We would be remiss not to bring up, the recent Robert Saleh firing and just the overall landscape of what that means for the Jets. And I'm just going to say it right now: if they don't win on Monday against the Bills, it's a must-win game. It's done. If they don't beat the Bills, it's over.
Sure. I mean, most likely, and at that point, like what starts to happen is like the byproduct of that, like the Aaron Rodgers experiment is, are we calling
Done.
it over?
Yep.
What is the implications then, fantasy wise for Brees and Garrett Wilson? And then do they start thinking about maybe moving Brees because Braylon seems to be very nice. He seems to be a very
Yeah.
serviceable, promising back. These are all things that they're gonna have to start like really considering
Yeah.
as they move forward if they don't win that game. And it's very possible they will not win that game.
Yeah.
However, the Bills are not looking great themselves. Josh has nobody to throw to. I'm not sure what's going on with the target share with Keon Coleman. I guess I was kind of told from a buddy who's a Bills fan that he was late for some team meetings, and then that's kind of been a catalyst as to why he's not been getting the types of targets you would think he should be getting for especially what's on that team.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very possible that the Jets can lose to the Bills, and then who knows what happens from that point.
I'm
Just a
really
big
hoping.
shit show.
I'm hoping it doesn't happen because then, like I said, but this is a must win. You're in first place for the division. If you beat the Bills, you're standing alone, and I think they can do it 100%. And you know what, people were saying, oh, Rodgers is the coach killer. This is Rodgers' fault. That no, no, let's go back 3 years. I think they put it on, a number of times this week on Get Up in the Morning. And like Salah's record was like 20 wins and like 36 losses.
Yep.
That's not going to get it done. It was a bigger picture than Robert Saleh. He's a great defensive coordinator. He's a great kind of like, I don't even know if you want to say locker room guy. The players seem to like him, but they never developed an offense. No matter as long as, I'm an avid Jets fan. They drafted Zach Wilson, did nothing with him. Now, Joe Douglas literally built a whole team to be ready to win, and there's no excuse this year. Rodgers is there. Tyrod's there to back him up if anything happens, and I am confident with Tyrod Taylor behind him.
Sure.
And they can easily do that. And like I said before, Jordan Travis is just waiting in the waiting in the wings essentially to kind of keep learning from Rodgers. And we could see another Jordan Love type situation with Jordan Travis. I mean, he's a hell of a QB. He was at Florida State. Look at them now. I think he made up a lot of their flaws. We'll see. I like Jeff Albrecht, I think is his name. If you watched Hard Knocks when the Jets were on there, the team really rallied around him. And I don't know if it's good editing, but like the team seems to really kind of build around him. And they did the two things they needed to do was demote Nate Hackett and then move somebody else into that position. And I think that's really going to help. I mean, Rodgers is frustrated clearly, and I think that was with Nate Hackett with the play calling. Granted, I just don't get how like Brees Hall can have like decent games weeks 1 through 3, and then all of a sudden the last 2 weeks, which were really easy wins, they didn't win. Like Minnesota was giving the Jets the time to win or the chance to win that game in London. And that's what's upsetting too, is they could have easily won that game. But, we'll see what happens. They need to overall really just start feeding Garrett Wilson again like they are. And, this isn't even talking about Devontae Adams. At this point, I doubt he comes here. I think it all is contingent on this Bills game. If they beat the Bills, I think they end up saying, hey, all right, we'll trade Mike Williams and a pick to the Raiders to get Devontae Adams. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I do think he makes the team better. Everyone keeps saying, "Oh, he's not going to make it better." Rodgers does this. No, he will, because it's going to open up freaking targets for Garrett Wilson. So
Right, like somebody's gonna get the ball in that event, right? Like if Tay's gonna be, or Garrett Wilson, like somebody's gonna be open, right? You can't double cover
always.
both of them. And going back to like the coach killer comment about Aaron Rodgers, I'm almost positive when McCarthy left and LaFleur came in that the first season they were just saying the same shit about their relationship, and that Aaron Rodgers was too much of a diva and he can't work with new coaches. It's just all this bullshit, and obviously that turned out to be just fine.
Yeah.
So I do kind of like that. Rodgers took the stance of, if we played better, Saleh would still be here, and that's honestly that's the case for most coaches, right? It's like if if the players played better, they wouldn't get fired. But yes, so we think Devontae. I don't think he goes there. I think there's going to be probably some other spots that are going to want him more than the Jets. But I do agree, it's dependent on like if they pull out a win this week, and then if not, maybe they just start selling house.
Yeah, I mean, overall, then Albrecht is just playing for his job to see if he can, with that interim tag, can he, last it and see if they can do any damage. And I hate to say it too, with them, because the Dolphins and Patriots are both so bad now without Tua, and then just the Patriots, they're going to look better with Drake May, but still, I'm actually buying in on Drake May. I think he'll be a fine quarterback. I don't think you waste that high of. Because he's got the pedigree, he's played. It wasn't like a Trubisky situation where he just didn't play at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, he's not even the most famous May, so I can't even can't even really give it to this guy. He looks good. He throws the ball well. He runs. He seems like he can command an offense. I just think it's going to be one of those things where it's like, great quarterback, great intangibles, shit team. He's never going to be able to get his feet off the floor because of it, and then all of a sudden his career is kind of derailed from it. Most quarterbacks that come out, that's what happens to them. Let's just be honest. It's not for a lack of talent. I think a lot of them can transition fairly well, but it's just like the team around them. They need those pieces, and that's where like the Bears, thank God they set up Caleb with all those pieces. So even when he struggled those first 3 weeks just throwing fucking ducks around, we still had the talent and the team that we knew he was, we set him up well. He was going to succeed. Keenan comes back, in the last couple of games? We'll get into it in a second, but the last couple of games, he's just looking great, looking like the person we thought he was going to be. And that's a big, attrition to the fact that the roster is set up to support him and not him just making plays. Because at his final year in USC, like you see what happens when he's got nobody around him, no good talent. He's just running for his life. Any good quarterback, if you don't have that talent, it don't matter how good you are. I'm sorry.
Yeah, overall, that's the biggest thing that they did. We're seeing what Jaden Daniels too is doing, and it's incredible.
That's impressive, though. Yeah,
it's impressive. The only problem is that defense, and he's doing everything in his power to keep them off the field, and that's what's saving them. But we'll see him come back to earth at some point later in the season when that defense is getting injured. That defense, I could be completely wrong, and that defense turns that page, but they're not very good either. But speaking into the Bears, Caleb, everybody was so worried about it. Oh, we should have kept Fields. I'm so sick of hearing about that. And okay, yeah, Fields is with Tomlin, and honestly, they don't look really. He's had a couple really good games, but in my opinion, it's I think I might have changed my tune a little bit because I said on like the last podcast he was doing really well, but like still, it's not even a conversation to have with Caleb because he has more Mahomes / Kyler Murray in him than I don't even know what Fields you can compare him to. Lamar maybe, and that's not even a good one.
Yeah, no.
It's lazy. I hate those lazy comps. Like I said, Lad McConkey. Oh, it's Cooper Kupp. Why? Because he's white. Like
literally, that's the only reason. It's not. They do not have the same route running ability. I am sorry.
No, never. But going back into the Bears, what they're doing is like for one, they're saying, I love how they had that players meeting and they went up to what's his name, Shane
Waldron.
Waldron. I almost
Yeah.
called him Luke Getzey again. That's even awful. I almost had a sour taste in my mouth. But Waldron changed the playbook and they opened it up and actually looked a lot better. They're not doing these little run, and Caleb looked like this.
Fucking
Like
hate it.
he
Yeah.
looked like he was just sitting there like this. Like you're sitting there like really hunched up for the people who aren't listening or watching on YouTube, but like, shrugged up shoulders, really tight. Now he's kind of looking a little bit more loose, letting the hair back,
Mm-hmm.
airing it out, which is good. And it's fine that he's not bombing it down the 50-yard line every single play because you're not going to win doing that. Not in the NFL. You can't do that. Now, you should be taking shots. Roma Dunze is brought in for that reason, and it's proved
Right.
it preseason. It's proved it in a number of games so far that you feed him that ball and that deep ball, he's going to catch it. But DJ Moore is starting to click with him, so like we're seeing that. That's been nice, and DeAndre Swift has been such an X
Oh,
factor on that team, and that's what they needed. It was that nice change of pace back, and then to complement with Roshan Johnson, who's a dog in that like on the goal line. He's not even a big guy. He just gets in the end zone, which is good.
yeah, and so like I think that's interesting because now Herbert had definitely become a running back three. But just so for those who don't know, Roshan was the backup to Bijan Robinson at Texas, and he really just like you get limited carries, but even then he still really stood out, which is why the Bears drafted him. But I think the biggest X factor, as you just said, was DeAndre Swift. Once that started to get going against the Rams, then other things are starting to happen. Now Caleb feels much better. Here's the thing: is we can't just have third and long. The first
No,
two games was third and long, third and long, third and long. It's like this
right,
guy's not a fucking magician.
right.
Like he can only do so much. Give him a third and five. Like we can manage that third and long every fucking drive.
Get
It's a,
creative.
it's a drive killer,
Right.
but I think that's Malik Neighbors is out with a concussion for the second straight week.
Yeah. He was at like he was at a concert or whatever, and people were like saying, "Oh, he's not taking it seriously," and I'm like, "All right, whatever. He's in fucking New York. Leave him alone."
Yeah. But so, yeah, I think the biggest thing is that DeAndre Swift, the run game has got going. The line is not getting absolutely destroyed and pancaked like they were the first two games. I actually thought like we had a high school line out there for the first two games, and it was very concerning to watch your center get pancaked.
Yeah, that was
Um,
not good
yeah,
at all.
Shelton, and then he's sitting here fucking yelling at Caleb the last game. It's a fucking fire, man. Shut the fuck up, dude. You're lucky you're on the team.
Right.
Like,
Well,
um,
I listened to a lot of talk radio in the morning too, and I had to laugh because Bill Murray, and no, not the Ghostbusters, Bill Murray stepped up and actually looked like their best guard on that offensive line. But man, I think right now because of the quality of teams, and this is not taking away from the fundamentals that Caleb is showing, but they show me this against a really good team. Like, show me
sure.
not even against Washington, because I looked at their schedule. So obviously Jacksonville's this weekend in London. Then they got the bye. You got Washington at Washington, and then you got Arizona. Their next competition, in all actuality, is Green Bay week 11, and we'll see. That's going to be the test. If
Yeah.
they win all these games, and like I said, Washington with Jaden Daniels is going to be a tough one. But you look into these games; these are all winnable games, and as long as Caleb's not turning the ball over, I think he's looking good. Now that offensive line scares me still. They're still
Yeah.
like it's just ugly, and that was the biggest complaint I heard from a lot of people that were the Justin Fields truthers. They wanted to keep him. They wanted to keep him and build around the line. But okay, how long are you going to kick the can down the thing? Like
Hmm.
you can't keep kicking the can down the road, and all these guys age out. And also, then you're just not resetting the QB market.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess going back with that Caleb thing is like within if the first real competition is week 11 against the Packers. What I like is that every week he has improved. And that's
Yeah,
all you could ever hope to see in your rookie
absolutely.
quarterback is that first week dumpster fire, second week dumpster fire looked this much better. Week
Yeah,
three comes, looks that much better. Week four comes, it's like, all right, now we got something. And then what was it last week where he really looked good. We didn't have any turnovers. He's throwing for a lot of yards. So I think about things that boost his confidence. Wow.
Totally.
Even if the team loses, even when
Yep.
his first 300-yard game, 2 picks, 2 interceptions, took the loss. But you know what? Fine, because all he has is critics. He can't do this. He can't do
Right.
that. He's gonna flop this. He can't throw for So when he starts checking these boxes, 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, 300 yards, couple touchdowns, no picks.
Right.
We're just trending upward, and if he keeps trending upward, we're gonna see the QB that we called a generational talent, not too long ago.
And his overall QB rating has gone up each week too. That was a
Yes.
big thing. So like, you look at like week 1, which we're going to say it was a pretty windy game, but like it was a 55.7 against Houston, which was a really bad game for him with the 2 picks, was 51. Then it went up to 80 against the Colts, 106 against the Rams, and then 126 against the Panthers. So like you said, there's been improvement. And the key thing in here is, as I said earlier, there's been no turnovers from him. He's not turning the ball over at that point. So keep it up this weekend against the Jaguars. I mean, no Brisker on defense this weekend. So, I mean, I don't think they're going to need it just because of the Jaguars kind of just overall implode each game. Etienne's hurt, so we'll see. They should be able to stop the run. I mean, it's all on T-Law. It's another one that's kind of like I mentioned on previous podcasts too. It's like, how many more chances is this guy going to get?
Well, he's going to get a lot because he is the only quarterback that from that class. They've probably all done the same thing if you look at their numbers. He's the only one who got paid.
Yep.
And I wonder why that. And it wasn't because he had better performance. That's for fucking sure. They also set him up to fucking fail as well. They really could have done a lot better. I mean, the bright side is that like Brian Thomas Jr. looks like wide receiver 1, absolutely.
Yep.
So that was a nice pick on their part. But now it's just like the other parts they got to fix. Tight ends not well. Evan Ingram is still just not playing, right?
He's hurt. I think it's a hamstring too.
So he's so fucking strained, So like again, like we got people that are just not gonna be like setting Trevor up for the best success around him, and then in turn, like that's more that he has to do on his end. And so far, he's proven that like he can't be that guy if he doesn't have the proper support. Some guys can. Like I actually think Jaden Daniels doesn't have that much support, and he's doing it. So
he's
like
been an outlier for sure. He's been amazing. Right now, he's rookie of the year.
Oh, for sure, and that's not even any question. And so like there's some that can do it, but just some that just can't do it. And I also think that's a testament to like Jaden Daniels' college journey. If you don't know anything about it, look it up. It's like that dude. He went from a couple of different teams. He didn't see a lot of success at Arizona State when he was there. Before he transferred to LSU. And this is just like resiliency. Like when you develop that resiliency and you kind of get exposure to it in college, it's only going to set you up better for the NFL. T-Law, for example, Elite 11, number 1 quarterback coming out, right? He's the best player in the class. Goes to Clemson, has all the best 5-star talent around him. This is when Clemson was the powerhouse, not the dog shit they are now because the DJ fucked them up. He goes to Clemson. He's got the best talent around him. Wins the Natty. What kind of resiliency is he going through? Like nothing. And so now when he gets to the NFL, he's like, fuck, I don't know how to deal with this. Whereas Jaden Daniels is like, all right, like we've been through this, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And so I think there's like a system that you go about, a process internally that you have when you go through those hard times. And if you don't go through them, I guess in college, then it's really hard for that to translate to the NFL.
Yeah, and I also think that build off of your point too. I think coaching is a huge thing. I think Doug Peterson's on his way out. Like if he's not fired by the end of this weekend, I wouldn't be shocked. But I mean, look at what some of these guys have done. Malik Willis with Matt LaFleur.
Sure.
Awesome.
Where do you go to college? Let's see.
Liberty.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was docked up really big.
Yeah, he was. He's got arm strength.
And then just to bring in like another, QB that we love from USC, who's actually going to be leading out the Trojans against Penn State this weekend is Sam freaking Darnold.
You're not over it, are you? Jesus
No,
Christ.
because I said it on the podcast. I wish it would have been JJ because that would have been even more funny because that was back in March. But I said it right after too. I said Sam Darnold is going to be the guy in that offense because he's got the coach and he's got something around him. When you're throwing to fucking not even Braylon Edwards, Jericho Cotchery, you have the ghost of Sean Green behind you. You're not going to be successful. And you know what's funny though is you talk to any.
You just took it back like to 2010. I think you're like, oh no.
I think I'm all over the place, but like they didn't have any. Moral
Jericho
of the story
Cotchery was way before Sam Darnold.
Yeah, one of the guys. They're so like they just didn't have anybody.
They didn't. No.
So like now that he actually has it, and he can and this proved it this weekend too against a good Jets defense, and he didn't have his best game at all. They still managed to win, and he ended up being a reason behind it. So he makes the throws, and then he's only going to keep building off of that with Hawkinson. And the Minnesota's been a surprise. I did not have any faith in them this year at all.
Yeah, well, especially in their running game, I think we had both anticipated that Aaron Jones was probably going to, or Ty Chandler was going to be RB1 at some point soon. And it seems Aaron Jones has held on to his starting role.
Yeah, he got banged up this weekend, but they have the bye, so he'll probably be back and fresh by then. So
Hawkinson should be back in about 2 weeks, and hopefully he's at the level that he was, before the ACL. They could very easily make a very deep run with that team, especially considering that's where I was about to get at. That defensive line is nasty. The whole defense actually is nasty. They're always consistently really good on defense. So we looked. I mean, the NFC North is so tough.
Yeah,
it is a very tough division, and Caleb's going to have to kind of navigate through that and kind of understand that too. That like this is actually one of the better divisions in football. This isn't the AFC East with those dog shit teams.
It happens. It happens every once in a while. Injuries play a huge part in it, but that's why I said like if the Jets. I might be calling them the panic button a little too early because they still have so many. They have 2 games against Miami. They have another game against New England still left. But, the Jets, that in that division, it's winnable. And all you need to do is just hang on. And, the wild card is still available too. But, speaking of which, too, I think the NFC North could have 3 teams make the playoffs this year, no doubt.
Sure.
Detroit, unless Minnesota really takes a downward spiral, they're going to probably get the division depending on how the interdivision games go. But, it'll be interesting. It's going to be a dogfight in both divisions between once the Bills and Jets. And then you got, 4 teams that could win that division in the North.
Yeah.
Yep. Real quickly too. Obviously, USC versus Penn State this weekend. Kind of. It doesn't matter for USC. The playoff chances kind of sailed when they lose to Minnesota on a really technicality call, which they should have never overturned that. The play on the field was he didn't get in, and to have a pile up like that and then to overturn it and say it's a touchdown because PJ Fleck was crying about it is not really the way to go.
Dude was about to have a fucking aneurysm. He was on one.
Yeah. But, there's not much else to say. Lincoln Riley needs to get his shit together. You're going to have to play big boy football in the Big Ten. That's something we've always heard. We have always known. USC should be held to higher standards, and you should be scoring 40 to 50 points a game being at USC. There's no excuses, at least in my mind. And I don't think that's on Miller Moss. I think he's doing the best he can with what the play calling is. They had 2 games that were winnable. They were up in the fourth quarter. They should have won that game, Michigan game. Didn't run out the clock. Michigan couldn't throw. And you let them into it. And then last week, too, kind of similar case. You gave Minnesota back the ball. And they just ran it down your throat and a couple of decent passes and game over. So,
yeah. Well, tomorrow's going to be a really exciting weekend. A lot of great games. Yeah, honestly, like the best games all year are going to be tomorrow. So make sure we're all tuning into that. Pretty excited to see. Oh no, he's on a bye. Damn, my boy Cam Ward, Heisman 2024. Who do you think do you think they're gonna give it to Travis Hunter just because of the?
If he has like another huge game, whether it's against no, they don't play Oklahoma. If he has another big game where he has like a game-changing pick or something like that, I could see it.
Here's my thing: is that like 1 touchdown and 1 pick I get it's both sides of the
That's
ball, but
fine.
like
Yeah.
we're starting to think that's crazier than Ashton's fucking 1,000 yards and 16
Well,
tutties.
that's the
You
thing
know,
too, is and Ashton's going to be drafted to probably the Cowboys realistically because they have an abysmal run game currently, or he's going to end up on like the Raiders who could also use a running back. The people who have loved Zamir
oh.
White, it's unfortunate. Um, anyway, just going into it, Genty has
Only
to
a
have,
clown would have bought into Zamir White.
yeah. I'd hate to have to truck him out week in, week out. I'll just play with
God.
my 7 running backs I have on my team.
Um,
Anyway, yeah, I think Genty, just based off of the fact that he's putting up 200 yards a game and like 3 or 4 touchdowns easily in the first half,
Sick.
regardless of competition, that's still impressive. Like, you're still playing big boy football.
Yeah.
So, anything else to close out on?
No, we're gonna see how this week goes in fantasy. I'm pretty excited. Doing pretty well in all of my leagues. I haven't flopped yet in any of them, so that's obviously exciting. Um, and I don't know. We're gonna start making some trades. Start kicking up the trades.
C2C is
Yeah,
going to be a fun one because I think it's
it
the
is.
packs are starting to separate. And I know, like, firsthand, too. I know you and I talked about it, too. But, like, for the college level, I'm just like, hey, I will, mortgage my future and go all in for the NFL side. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening with that.
I like that people are starting to do that because they're starting to realize that, like, well, in college, you don't need the superstars. You just need the guys that put up points. And since there's so
Yep.
many teams in college, so many players, you can find those guys, and you need to start. You really need to think about your NFL team a little
Yep.
bit more than you do your college team in terms of because NFL, you need the stars. The stars are going to get the production and the points. In the college, that's not the case.
All right.
I'm actually going to start Ethan Hampton NIU this week.
Yep. You have to.
And he might put up 40, 50 points. You
100%.
don't need the stars in college. You just need to know who the players are and what teams
Yep.
are playing who. And so that's why I kind of like that dynamic of having both
Yeah,
combined
it's it's
leagues.
it's fun because like it also makes people think and it actually shows who actually knows what's going on in the world of football. You don't just get lucky with draft picks and whatnot. But
Yep.
you know what's funny too is like so to break down a quick trade too is like I traded Jackson Dart for Justin Fields.
I would
Well,
have never done
vice
that.
versa.
Yeah.
I got rid of Fields because I had enough NFL depth at QB, and I'm like, okay, let me just kick the can down the line a little
Well,
bit.
you weren't starting him either. Let's,
No. I have Jordan Love, C.J. Stroud, Sam Darnold in the mix with
buddy.
that.
I saw that and I started laughing.
Yeah, Dart was more because I thought, hey, he was putting up like 50 to 60 points a week, and I was like, okay, if I want to turn it around, I could do it. And he ends up putting up like 21. I'm like, okay,
Sure,
so
but we think about NFL implications, though. It's like Fields is not going to be a long term starter. Dart's going to come to the NFL, and we don't know what he's going to do. He might hit, he might not, and so like the percentage of possibility, I would favor towards like leaning with staying with Dart because he could
yep,
hit, he could not. It's like Fields, like nah, you're going to get 1 year of starting, pending Russ doesn't come back, and then
right.
like
Which
this
they're
guy's
talking he is too.
his career's his career's over. I mean, when we're like what we're talking about, like he's really his career's done. Darts is looking really good, and then if he hits in the NFL, well, now you have a superstar QB.
Yep,
So
exactly.
I
And then
probably wouldn't have made that trade,
yeah,
but
that was the one that was offered to me too. It
it's
was
because you're
funny.
just hosing kids on these trades. Just
I don't think
hosing
I'm close. I don't
everybody.
think
You fucking
so.
hose Dan for Andy Dalton
Uh,
for Brees Hall.
It was not
Unreal.
okay. For the viewers, it was not Andy Dalton for Brees Hall. There was a lot of other stuff
Unreal.
added to it.
Yeah,
So
fucking Tolbert, the guy on waivers last week.
Bucky
Um,
Irving, and then to
Bucky
a
or
earlier second round 25, and then a 2026 first. So here's one thing to remember about my first, Rich. And you
Cheeks.
know this too well. Is
Cheeks.
if worst comes to worst, if I don't make the playoffs, I'm gonna win the toilet bowl each year. That's the thing about my team is my team is too good year in and year out to not. This is what happened when I got hosed out of the playoffs a couple of years ago. Didn't make it that year. ended up in the toilet bowl. Guess who won? Poppy won. So ended up with Bijan, traded him to you. Yeah, Josh Allen and Diggs. So it ended up working out. But like, you look at overall, you just look at the trades too. And then like the other trade I made was it was Ted McMillan and DJ Lagway for Ken Walker, the one backup running back to Texas, and then Zach Charbonnet.
And
So,
I was
yeah,
fine with that because that's Ken Walker is an NFL superstar. Charbonnet is actually he was a second round pick. He's a really good player from
backup.
UCLA backup. So now you get the backfield. And looking at college, that McMillan, if you haven't watched him on Arizona, the guy's a fucking dog. He's gonna go top 10 in the NFL. So
So
knowing
good.
that, and then you add in DJ Lagway. If you guys don't know who he is, you 5-star fucking quarterback who was at Florida. Guy's a monster. He's fucking huge, big player. Reminds me of Cam Newton, honestly. And so that trade, paralleling from college to the NFL seems very fair. I was actually fine with that one.
Yeah, yeah, and overall, like I said, it hurt getting rid of Tet because he was my third overall pick in that. But when I'm
Yep.
looking at like, hey, I want to win. I want to try to give myself the best way to win, which I need a like wide receiver in the NFL side now because Pittman's hurt. But
Yeah.
um, overall, you have to make the moves to better your team. And yeah, like sure, I'm losing out on a superstar wide receiver, but I got a superstar running back in return. So we'll see what happens.
Yep.
All right, so that's the show, and hopefully you guys keep listening.
Tip your bartenders.